No.
Good. Okay. Great. So I'm going to talk about my work, which is rebirthing breathwork, and what I have learned from the experience, because it's taken me to lots more places than I expected it to. So thank you to Natasha for allowing me to speak. It's very kind of you.
You're welcome.
It's given me an opportunity not only to speak to you, but also to get a little video of myself, which I suddenly realised is really precious and I've got to do that. So. And doing it live is much, much better than being at home, doing it on my own. So I want to start by telling you something that happened yesterday, which has really put it into perspective for me. As I explained, I went to see a cousin I've not met before from Tasmania, and it was interesting to get myself ready and book the train and think, how's this going to be, what's it going to be like? And I enjoyed that exchange, and it was at my brother's house. My sister-in-law was there, and two of their children were there, and my cousin's two little boys were there, who were 6 and 4. And as I was leaving, I was sharing with them something, I can't remember how it came up now, that I don't know who my GP is. And I'd run the surgery that I'd been to find that I'm not on their records anymore. They assumed that I'd moved, because I haven't been to the doctor for 25 years. And that was something that they really took, because clearly that was something unusual, something desirable, something which, if I could say to somebody, do you know, you may not ever need to be ill again. And I realised yesterday in that moment that this is what I'm offering. So instead of saying I teach rebirthing breathwork, or I talk about food or diet or whatever it is, what I'm offering people is the possibility and the confidence to know they never need to be ill again. And that's quite something. So, excuse me. So yeah, sure, I use rebirthing breathwork. And I first went for emotional learning because I was married, I had a young family, I was unhappy in my marriage, and I couldn't imagine being brave and bold enough to live on my own. So I felt stuck in this marriage. And when I did the breathwork, I gained the confidence, and I moved into a new phase in my life, which was totally wonderful, which wasn't what I expected. I thought it would be bearable, didn't realise it would be totally wonderful. So that was grand. And then many years later, about 15 years later perhaps, I was hit by a car, and my leg was crushed, and I was bleeding very fast, and it was so painful I didn't realise which bit had been hit, and I was bleeding so quickly that I was about to die in a couple of minutes, because I had that experience of being away from my body, travelling down the tunnel, moving towards the light, that stuff, and I had a decision to make. Did I want to carry on where there was no pain, or did I want to come back and see my children grow up? And I believe that the connecting of my breath during this time, maybe not at that moment, I suspect I probably stopped breathing for that moment, but the fact that I had been trained for so long to connect to my breath through any feeling, through any fear, through anything that happened to me, is what first of all saved my life, and what secondly meant that I had an extraordinary recovery. And so that's why I talk about breathwork in this way, because it's not just oxygen that we breathe. We breathe in energy. We are filling our energetic body, our atomic body, as we fill our biological and physical body. And I've been watching some lovely documentaries recently which are really pointing to the ultimate connection between physical health and the thoughts we have, the decisions we make, the fears we carry. And there are enough people now in the world, I was talking to Marva earlier, there are enough people now in the world who are accepting that this connection is so close that it's a revolution, and that's the word he used, wasn't it? but it's a revolution back to the ancients who all knew this. You know, we've had this knowledge, it's not new. We've just shunned it. Isn't that sad? But anyway, here we are, coming back to it again. And so I wanted to say to you, I'd like to give you a little demonstration of breathwork, conscious connected breathing. It ties in beautifully with what Natasha was saying earlier. And I would like to ask you which bit you would like me to do, because I have a fixed time. I didn't notice when I started.
You're okay. 10
Thank you. To ask you which areas you'd like me to talk about, because obviously I have a short time. So I can go into what does it do, why does it work, and I can talk about why we stopped breathing properly in the first place, because that is a really good question. Why don't we? Natasha was talking about how our experience as youngsters, we're absorbing what's happening in our families, creating the patterns that run our lives, and breathwork really brings the subconscious into the conscious, which is one of the reasons it's so useful in a practical way, because we can then make decisions based on what we've realised, which is lovely. So those are two things I can go into, or I can go into what made me write this one, which is The Accident. It's my most recent book, and I have some copies of these with me. And what I realised during the writing of this one, which was there is a thread that runs through all of this, and it is oxygenating our bodies so well, so much, that we never get ill. And that goes across the board. It's not just for little things like a cold or something, it's actually for all the big chronic diseases too. Because I've now learned and researched and listened to other people and realised that enough work has been done, sometimes many, many years ago, to show that this is the case across the board. And that's one of the things that I've realised and collected now, to see that the amount of oxygen that we are allowing our bodies to use doesn't just mean the breathing in of it, it means the circulating of it, and the amount of nutrients that allow our bodies to use the oxygen well, the amount of hydration that we have, which allows our blood to be the correct viscosity. All of these things influence fundamentally how well we can be. And as we were talking about earlier with Jenny, we are in exactly the place that we are because of all the things that have happened so far. And they've brought us to here. But in this moment, we are creating what happens next. And that's the point of power. And just a little side here, because we're all women here in the room. It took me a long, long, long time before I realised I had an issue with power, personal power, allowing myself to use my creative energy because I believed that it belonged in the hands of men. And that was how I was brought up. It took me an awful long time, quite a lot of relationships, and quite a lot of experiences to think, oh my goodness, I'm handing my power away. No wonder I don't feel as though I have it. And that's been something that I'm still working on now. But all of those things together are what's brought me to a place where I have a huge amount of resources to offer. And I have, it appears, a gift for sharing them. A bit like the lovely Natasha. So, here's some water. I would like it if you have a particular area that I've talked about you'd like me to expand on. And if you don't, then I will talk about some of the things I believe are useful.
I'd be interested to hear more about oxygenating the body, so that you don't get ill. And I just wondered, about alkaline water and
all of those
roles.
things.
Yeah.
Okay.
As well.
Yeah.
I'd like you to talk about and as Sharon said, and also obviously some techniques.
Yeah. Well, let's start with that. Actually, let's start with the 20 breaths exercise, because we've experienced how experientially doing things ourselves is better than anybody talking. So I'm going to sit down for this too. And let's do 20 breaths. So it's 5 breaths repeated 4 times, 4 short breaths, 1 long breath. I do it with my hands because then I can remember. So, sticky label, I'm sorry, I'm going to take it off, it's just driving me nuts. So what I will do is I will count you in, yeah? So we start with 4 shorter breaths and then we do 1 long breath 4 times. And I use my fingers, then I don't get confused. So the breathing is continuous, which means that as you breathe in, then you breathe out. That's it. And you just keep doing that. Then do that, 20 breaths, and it only lasts about 1.5 minutes. So let's begin with a short breath, 4 times. And a long breath. Short breaths. And a long one. Short breath. And a long one. Short breath. Long one. Last breath. How did that feel?
Dizzy.
Yeah.
My face feels hot.
Yeah?
My nose feels cold.
Yeah.
It's really cold.
I
I
feel
feel
rushed.
Yeah.
Okay.
I feel rushed.
Interesting, yeah, yeah.
I feel more relaxed.
Okay, yeah.
in between. I wanted to laugh. I don't know why.
Yeah,
I just,
yeah, that's a good one too.
You want
It's
to
hysterical.
To laugh, yeah, yeah.
more connected.
Connected. I feel a bit on edge.
Yeah.
I'm afraid.
I feel rushed.
Yeah.
I feel yeah.
Don't be afraid.
Bring it on. I can do
Yeah.
what you want to do. Yeah, I feel that I should
really,
be sitting.
really interesting how
Yeah.
20 of those connected breaths can bring you to
Wow.
this. Imagine an hour of it. Yeah? So what we do is we breathe for an hour, and this is where we'll go
Going
into
to lie down for
what
an
we
hour.
want
On my chair.
We do it lying down
Yeah.
for that reason. And yes, people do break out into hysterical laughter because we're making connections. Yes, people get relaxed, but not usually straight away. Yes, people get tense because what we're doing is we're allowing you to feel everything you keep stuffed down all the time. Yeah? So for all of those things that you've all described, they are all normal because each of you has got your own story. And the reason I like this particular style of breath work, there are now lots. Since I trained 25 years ago when there was one type, now there are loads. There's this, that and the other and whatever. But the reason I like this one is because there's no pattern or control or guidance or prompting.
No right or wrong.
There's no right or wrong, it's just you. So what we do is we connect your breath and somebody accompanies you. And the whole point of this and the change is that when we first learned it, we were isolated. When we first learned to breathe, if you were born in a Western standard way, which of course not everybody is, but if you were probably removed from your mother, you probably had the cord cut before you were breathing, and in either of those cases, you will have been very afraid when you learned to breathe. And if we learn to breathe when we're afraid, we then never properly, fully breathe when we're under any sort of tension or stress, change, novelty, shift. And that's why it is that almost all of us, including me, I still do it occasionally, hold here when we're afraid. Yeah? It's a completely unnatural thing to do. If a baby is born and breathing before the cord is cut, and the baby is with its conscious mother and all of the perfect things that you can imagine, which don't often happen, but at least some of them, there is an overlap. Biology creates an overlap so that the baby will be safe and feel safe. And unfortunately, because of some things that happened, which I won't go into now, but the way that things developed, it means that the baby is not the priority. The baby's long-term mental, emotional and physical health isn't the priority. So to move on to how you oxygenate the body fully, there are a number of factors. I have a free download called Indestructible Health from my website, which lists these. It's 7 pages long and describes this. So if you want it, you can take that later. My website's catherineholland.co.uk.
Catherine
Holland,
Holland.
like the country.
Shall I write it up on here?
Holland.
The factors are briefly outlined in this book, but the actual explanation is in this guide, which is a freebie download.
So Catherine, Indestructible.
Indestructible Health.
How?
So if I just talk a little about some of the things that I realised and I learned. After this accident, I went on to treat physical injuries because I'd got a leg I needed to get better. And I needed to learn to walk again. I was totally committed to cycling, climbing, taking my motorbike test, dancing, all the things I'd done before, because there was no way I was going to live not doing those things. So that was what I dedicated myself to. And of course, I was attracted into learning how to treat physical injuries. And I then went on to run a pain clinic in Oxford for 14 years, which I finished the beginning of this year. And I learned from that what we're doing when we're getting something physically damaged to work again is we're getting not only the blood to flow through to bring oxygen, but we're removing the damaged tissue. And one of the things you were doing in that 20 breaths exercise, apart from breathing in more oxygen, was breathing out more carbon dioxide. And that's the thing people don't realise. If you depress your breath, you don't get as much oxygen. But actually the major thing that you don't do is you don't get rid of the toxic build-up in your body. 70% of the toxic removal from the body is in the breath. That's a lot. So if we're depressing our breath to any degree, we are building up toxins in our body. So just like if you drink a lot of Coke, you're building up toxins in your body. If you're not breathing well and fully, you're doing the same thing. And that explains partly why as we age, as we get older, we expect our health and fitness to decline. And in the same way when we talk about food, and this is the acid and alkaline part of this, if you eat food, particularly that hasn't been heated, and that's above 45 degrees, so actually you can heat it, but you just mustn't heat it to the extent that it is changed. So for example, I discovered proteins are also changed by cooking. I knew fats were, but I hadn't realised proteins are, and really the food is changed so much that it only has, I think it's something like between 50 and 80% of the nutrition is removed by cooking. So you might only have something like 15% of the value left by the time you've cooked it, and quite a lot of the vitamins are destroyed by heat, and all of the enzymes are. And we need those enzymes. Sorry?
That means steaming is worse.
Steam
You can steam vegetables. They always tell you that steaming vegetables is
better than boiling?
Yeah.
It's better because you don't lose the juices in the water, unless you eat the water in your gravy or something. But it is no better than boiling in the sense of preserving the nutrients. However, people tend to steam things for a shorter time.
Okay.
Yeah, but ultimately, the lovely thing I've learned is that it's possible to make beautiful, satisfying, amazing meals like lasagna. Don't laugh. When I heard that, I thought, no, you can't do that, or no, don't be silly. Until I experimented, and I really went to town on it. So now I can make pudding, chocolate gâteau, lasagna, lovely pastry, without cooking anything.
I've tried your lasagna, it's very nice.
Have you?
I was amazed.
Yeah, okay. And I was blown away by this. So this is another way that you can increase the oxygen to your cells. You change the acidity balance in the body, and by doing so, the cells are able to absorb more oxygen. So the items in my list, a little bit like Natasha's list actually, are ways that you can change the environment in such a way that your body takes what it needs and then it doesn't need to get ill. But the thing that we're also looking at alongside this, the oxygen business, is the energetic parts of the body. And I listened to a lovely description. It's not new, but it is beautiful. On an atomic level, if you go down with your microscope to thousands, millions, you begin to see not only are we fresh air, because there are gaps between all of the atoms, but that is influenced by our thoughts. You know, an atomic structure that is constantly moving in a minute way is just a representation of who we are in any given time as an organism. And an organism is a collection of molecules sticking together out of habit. We've got an identity. But when I died for a minute or whatever it was in the road, I realised that my body was there and I was here and I was not it. So I felt exactly like me, but my body was down there. That was a good lesson. It was a real proper cast iron proof of, yes, my soul, my spirit, my essence, Catherine-ness, is here most of the time, although sometimes in breathwork sessions you do experience being a little way away, and that's quite fun too. But ultimately, it's habit. And if I move on into another existence and my body breaks down into the pile of sulphur and iron and whatever it's made of on the ground and gets blown away, the me is the part that feels and I identify with myself. And that's quite exciting. But you don't have to lose the physicality, but gain in spirituality. And that was another thing I realised while I was writing this book, that the more we step into our spiritual essence, the healthier our physical bodies get. And that was another, okay, it makes sense now. But before that, it didn't feel like those two things went together. But now I realise that they do. So in that little guide, I itemise each of the areas that I feel are important to our physical and spiritual health. And then underneath, I give an explanation as to why I believe that's the case. So, for example, with water. People think that when they're drinking something that's got hot water in it, that they're drinking water. You're not. You're drinking whatever it is that's dissolved in it, and your body cannot use that to clean itself. So although it's fine to drink whatever you like, don't think it's water and don't think it's cleaning you. So if you washed your clothes in Coke, how would they look when they were dry? If you washed your clothes in red wine, how would they look when they were dry? If you washed them in tea, coffee, beer, any of the things that you drink, they're not going to get cleaned by it. And when I was doing a little bit of research, as you do, because I'm always doing this, I love it, I love looking stuff up, reading, I discovered, okay, a red blood cell is 0.008 of a micrometer. That's small, okay? A micrometer is 1,000th of a millimetre. Small. Your smallest capillary, which is the tube that your blood travels down to get to each cell, is only slightly bigger than that. Now, if you don't drink enough water, the red blood cells cannot get down with little tiny tubes, because anything else that you eat and drink is too big to get down the tube, only water will get down there. So down the tiniest capillaries, you need enough water for your body to be able to do its job properly. And the other thing that you may know about water and salt balance, and this is another issue with the acidity, if your cells are more, concentrated inside the cell than outside the cell, then the salts will move through the cell walls by osmosis into the blood if it's more dilute than the internal of the cell. If it's the other way around, the opposite happens. So if you aren't drinking enough water or eating enough salt, and I hasten to say it needs to be sea salt, proper real salt, not table salt, which is full of chemicals, but real salt. If you aren't eating enough real salt, you will put on weight because your cells will become more concentrated than the blood around them. Your blood will become more concentrated than the cells, so the water will migrate into the cells. I'm sure which round I've got that. Yeah, if you're not eating enough salt, the first one was right. The cells become more concentrated than the water level in the blood. So the water level in the blood goes into the cells because you've not got enough salt in the blood, trying to help to dilute the cell. But it just means that you get more and more edema. So this information that people have been giving out that you shouldn't eat a lot of salt, you need to eat what you need. And the way you tell is by taste. Same as with water. Once you've trained yourself, you learn. I'm thirsty, you drink water. You can have other drinks as entertainment, but they're not going to help your body to balance its salt and water levels.
So is that there's no problem with hot water then?
Not as far as I know.
It was just about the heating.
So long as it's just plain water. So what you're saying is a cup of tea is not classed as that glass of water you need.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
sure,
a
you can drink
brewed
tea.
is
Sure.
not classed, but a pure glass of water
Yep.
is, and so many of those a day is what you need for your body to get what it needs.
Yeah, and to be cleaned. Yeah, yeah. For your kidneys to work on.
What's about the water with lemon when you put the lemon to your water, like in the morning?
Like a fresh slice of lemon.
Yeah. When you squeeze the lemon inside, it's the same?
It's not water.
It's not water. You can
So-
drink it, it's fine.
It's got
Yeah.
a little bit of tea in,
Yeah.
and it will like detox. But
Yeah.
it's not quite
Yeah.
the same.
If you wash something, especially wash clothes are a good example, or hair, if you wash it with something that's still got something in it, it isn't going to be as clean. And yes, lemon's great to eat. I eat lots of it. I eat lots of lemon rind because I believe that it's got the bioflavonoids in that I need to help my blood system stay healthy and strong, which it does. Just that's my way of describing this is how we need it. This is what our bodies need. You know, we were designed a long time ago. Thank you, at a time when the only things that were available were the things that grew and the things that were on the planet that somebody hadn't done anything to them. So yeah, of course you'd be eating lemons because they grow on trees, and you'd be drinking water, and you might even make yourself a fruit tea. But ultimately, our bodies are designed for green leaves, root vegetables, small insects probably, not so many big, large animals, but probably some, depending on what's available. Well, we did, didn't we? Fish, things that, and shellfish in particular, but depending on who you are. But that's where our bodies were developed. We were developed
natural.
in a place where this was what was available, seaweed, stuff like that. And that's what our digestive system has designed to work for. It's designed to digest and to make use of. What's really interesting if you start eating more food raw is your energy levels really go up.
Yeah.
I got that when I did my breath work.
I'm a bit, when you say raw, as in my head, uncooked.
Yeah.
So I will eat a raw carrot. I will
Yeah.
eat so you don't eat meat.
I do eat some raw meats, yeah. I eat salami, which is air dried, and also prosciutto ham.
You would never eat a steak.
I wouldn't eat a steak because I don't like it. But that's quite apart from it. If I wanted to, then I would. I don't eat everything raw all the time, never anything cooked. If I go to my kids for a meal, I will eat what they put on the table. But when I'm at home, which is most of the time, and when I provide food for myself, then I eat stuff raw because I feel fabulous when I do. And somebody said, and I really like it, when you eat your diet like this, you feel as good as cooked food used to taste. And it's true. So sometimes I'll go to, say I'm going out with friends and I go to a pub and there isn't anything suitable I would consider a good meal on the table. You know, say it's a steak and just salad, and I can't live on salad. Then I will have something that I consider a compromise. Sometimes it's just a nostalgic compromise. So I'll have a Sunday roast dinner because I love it. And I do that maybe, I don't know, twice a year. I don't think that's a big deal. And as Natasha was saying earlier, I don't want to be doing something for the sake of it. I don't want to be rigid. And I want to be really well.
So you will waver. So if you are out, you will actually fit into that circumstance at the time.
It depends. I weigh it up. And I weigh up how hungry I am. I always take food with me. I always take at least one naked bar with me. Fruit with me. It depends on the situation as to what I consider is the best for me at that time. But you see, when I had this accident, so they pretty much took my lower leg off. They took off all the skin, all the muscles, and they smashed the bone up, okay? I had 100% skin graft take. Now, I didn't know anything about skin grafts. You probably don't either, and I hope you never will. But there is no box on the form that says 100% take, because it never happens. And they didn't even want to write it down, because they said, well, there's no box for 100%. You can have 90. I said, you're going to put 100 on there. I was feeling pretty awful, but I was jolly well going to... Somebody needs to recognise this. Yeah, loads of things like that happened. I went for my 1 year checkup afterwards, and this is a guy I'd never seen before, so he was just doing the 1 year checkup. And he said, what have you been putting on this? It looks like a 10-year-old injury, not a 1-year-old one. I said, I haven't been putting anything on it, it's what I eat. And he laughed at me.
So did you eat the raw food after that?
My diet at the time I was injured was 50% raw, and the rest of it was whole food. I was a whole food vegan at that time. And I'd read a book about raw food called Raw Energy by Leslie Kenton, and it sparked me off thinking I need to make more effort. But only 2 years ago did I properly start making dinners that were raw. And I really understood how to prepare them. I don't have a dehydrator. A lot of people make meals that are very similar to familiar cooked ones by dehydrating them for a longer period. So the temperature is lower, they just do it for longer. But it still doesn't feel as good as eating what I eat now. Anyway, but there I am, I've had my half an hour, thank you. Thank you for listening and taking
You'll all appreciate how wonderful that is.
Thank you. Stop.
Some real good takeaways there. Real good takeaways.
And thank you for listening to me and encouraging me, because I want to take this out into the world, and it's a big deal.
You're going to.
Really big deal.
You are going to. It's happening. If I have to keep you.
There's a raw food meetup group. You remember that?